Good morning, everybody. Hi, I'm John Callion. I run the research and development group for Deutsche Telekom in Berlin, Germany. And one of the topics that we've spent a lot of time on the last 2 years, 2+ years, is something you may have heard of called blockchain. A second topic we work on, artificial intelligence. And so just a short introduction to where we're seeing these two technologies meet. Our lab tends to be very technology focused. We're very academically inspired. So we get a lot of really good forward-thinking research into the commercialization side that we tend to focus on for telecom. And the machine-to-machine economy, not like it's a new concept, but the technology that can bring us into the future with it, blockchain and artificial intelligence, that's where the focus is for us and for a lot of people. We like to be a little provocative, talking about cryptocurrencies being dead. Of course, they're not. However, it's not our focus. It's really interesting to look into the technology side of cryptocurrencies. In fact, that's where we started our journey. In fact, if none of you have ever read about blockchain, studying Bitcoin is a great place to start. It's just a short 11-page white paper to get through, and you can really start getting the basics of what blockchain really is. But the fact that you can take this technology and weave it into any system architecture, in fact, banks and banking and the financial industry are really leading, from my point of view, using this technology. On the other side, we have artificial intelligence, and it's really speeding up. But a lot of us wonder how much we can trust artificial intelligence. If you call into a bank and you're talking to a robot, are we going to get to the point where the robot can actually have sympathy for you, and you actually can have a conversation? So one of the projects in the labs, we were thinking about sympathy as a service. Just an AI you can talk to, maybe you got a problem in your life or at your work or whatnot. And maybe we could monetize that. But I think all of us technologists who work on artificial intelligence, we're getting to a place where we can actually make that real soon. But the point is, do we trust the data that's going into the algorithms that affect our lives? And I think especially with our financial lives, how much are we trusting the artificial intelligence? And this is where we really bring them together, because I think with blockchain, you have a source of trust, especially as you verify data and run it through an algorithm that a robot's going to do something with. So this is the nice place where we're starting to work and these things come together. Eventually, where this will end up is we will have the robots making decisions for us autonomously. And that's where we need blockchain to bring in the trust layer to make sure that the autonomous decisions made on our behalf are correct. Again, we don't think too much about banking. We think more about mobility. We're in Germany. It's kind of the biggest industry there. But we wonder about cars making decisions for us, right? I think in California, they've got like a few companies who have done thousands now of autonomous rides. But what does the car know about you? Does the car know you're in the vehicle? Do you want the car to know you're in the vehicle? I mean, in some regards, it'd be nice if the car just showed up for you, took you to the gym, went and charged itself, picked up somebody else. But that's a lot of data, a lot of personal data that a vehicle is going to have about you. So we worry about it a bit. So anyway, for our lab, this is the domain we're in, specifically bringing blockchain and artificial intelligence together. And our argument is that in the coming 3-5 years, you'll see systems architected, built, and put into production that are going to bring these two things together. So that's what we do. Thank you for having me today, and I think we're going to start the panel now.
Please welcome our moderator, Mark Goldberg. Listen, among all the things he does, he's a marathon runner, so you have to beware. Don't say I didn't warn you.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. We have 35 to 45 minutes to talk about banking in a new era. And I'm going to start with, and we have a huge, banking in the new era is a bit like our panel. It's crowded, it's complicated. We have different players coming from the financial industry, the telecom industry, the traditional banking industry, the startup scene. And we're going to try to have a dialogue on three things. One, what is the state of the union? Who is doing what between the large telecom player that are saying, I have delivered such amazing service to my customer that I want to become a bank. And things are working so well that I want to extend and increase my ARPU, and it's hard to do on the telecom space, which is being disrupted, and so I'm going to move into the financial services business. The banks are saying, well, banking is my business, and so we have two people coming from the traditional banking, one who is innovating from a bank, and the other who is a traditional banker. And so we're going to get their perspective on how the financial ecosystem is evolving. We have EIF that has been the key source of fund-of-fund investment across Europe, and we're going to get their perspective not only on who is being funded in the fintech world, but how they are being funded and how the changes that we were talking about with blockchains or maybe enabling new type of funding, whether they are ICO, whether they are security token. The ICO bubble seems to have blown up and is totally dead. Is that coming back? And also, I'd love to get your perspective on what's happening at the state level with crypto yuan and large player like the Gram or Libra. And then we have the startup ecosystem that are saying, this is a fantastic market. It's been poorly served. The existing player have an appalling service, and we'll get their perspective on how they are going to create defendable value against the behemoths that are the banker and the telecom player. I want to have 3 rounds and 3 key questions. The first one is, who are you and what do you do in that ecosystem today? And we'll try to be interactive. The second round is going to be on perspective. What's happening? What's under development? What don't we see, which is currently actually at play? And the third one is going to be about surprises. What have you seen in the last 12 months that has surprised you? What are the lessons learned? And before we start, I'll start with one number. 588 million users in a large fintech player that was not visible 1 or 2 years ago, which market valuation is $150 billion, which is Alipay that spin off and became Ant Financial. And that gives you an idea of the type of tectonic shift which is at play, where certainly you have one of the major player, very Asia, China centric, but once you have that scale and once you have the data, of course you're going to go abroad. And so the world is changing. It's changing due to market forces and technology forces. And so let's get the various perspective from the various element of the market. And let's start with telecom and then bank and then EIF and then startup.
So who am I and what I do? Well, in this case, I'll just represent telecom. Telecoms have invariably tried to become banks, I think, in almost every country, and it's very difficult.
It's kind of an interesting idea, but why would a telecom player believe he can be a bank? But that's another question.
Why they think they could be a bank?
Yeah.
Well, they have hundreds of millions of customers. They offer a service. Why couldn't they reach out and offer banking? I think there's 2 conditions, though. People who are already banked, the switching cost of switching banks, I mean, who wants to go through that, right? We have so much tied into it. So you're not going to get banked customers, so you go after unbanked customers. And that's where the problem is for them. It's hard to get it done, but, anyway.
Maybe Orange?
Hello, Shana Tova. Well, I have the chance to represent Orange, which is one of the largest telecom operator and mobile financial provider in Africa and Middle East across 18 countries. And we really believe that telco are legitimate to extend financial inclusion in those countries because we have the distribution network, we have the brand, we have the investment capabilities, and we have the digital. And based on that, what we're looking for is really to try to partner with the best players of the ecosystems, be they banks, fintechs, GAFAs, whatever, and try to push to the clients the best offers based on 2 or 3 key principles: simplicity, engagement, and customer experience, and upsell of services across the life of the
And
client.
so that's how you're going to beat N26 and Revolut and the other guys.
Well, getting back to your point, I think the telecom operators and banks and fintechs globally are in a win-win game, because obviously in certain segments we are competing ones against the others, but I'm sure that the value that we can create together by connecting other people, connecting with financial services, the last 1.7 billion people in the world, we have no bank at all, is making much more than the competition that we can get at the short term.
Great. So we have the telecom player. Now let's hear from the banks.
I'm starting as a bank?
Yes.
Okay. So my name is Michal Kisos Herzog. I'm the CEO of Pepper. For those of you who are not familiar with Pepper, Pepper is a 100% mobile bank that was built within an incumbent, Leumi, which is the leading bank in Israel. But we were built on a separate core business, infrastructure, different brand, different employees. Everything is brand new. No current account fees, 24/7 services, and all the stuff you know about neobanks. And I'm sure we'll talk later about why do I think we are better and different. Also, I'm very glad. I'm not glad I'm the only woman in that panel, but I'm glad I'm from Israel. So kudos to Israel for putting the only female in that panel. And I'm a mother, and I have 2 little kids.
Excellent. Michael, you're with Unicredit AG.
Yes. If you want to see the last traditional banker, it's me. My name is Michael. I'm heading Unicredit in Germany, which is a 150-year-old bank. We are operating in 14 countries, more than 20 million clients in all these countries, and we are currently rebuilding the business model to be more efficient, to have a better customer journey, and that's what we are currently doing.
Okay. So we have the telecom, the banker. Now let's talk from the startup ecosystem, and then we'll get the investor perspective.
Hi, my name is Lucas. My personal adventure with fintech started 2 years ago when my company started to work purely with fintech startups to build their products. So it was a really interesting time, because we are working with all of those early stage startups, trying to help them with their products. Those startups are mainly from UK. Some of them are quite successful already with investment from guys like JP Morgan, Legal & General, and Barclays. So there's a huge variety of the stuff that is being done, on this early stage level. So maybe what's directly connected to banking are 2 things. One are all of the solutions that are trying to integrate and use the current banking infrastructure to provide some additional services. So, for example, everything's connected to banking integrations, integrating with, for example, insurance products with some neobanks that have marketplaces for those services within their banking solutions. And the second thread is, of course, a lot of those startups are trying to build something that will be used by banks or the guys that want to come to this banking industry, and they are providing some elements of banking technologies as a service. So you can remove your old legacy systems with some elements that are built from ground up with much better efficiency and much value for a client. Yeah.
Okay, great. Lou.
Hi, I'm Lou Kerner, and I'm a crypto VC with Crypto Oracle based out of New York. And we're really focusing on two things right now. The first, which is scaling up and to the right, the first killer app of crypto, which is speculation in Asia. It's really going crazy. The second thing we're focused on is Web3 applications, decentralization, which is decentralized, which really isn't scaling yet at all, but we all believe will at some point in the future. We also started something called Crypto Mondays, which is the largest crypto meetup in the world. Just came from Singapore. That was our 53rd country, because at the end of the day, we believe that the biggest difference between crypto and everything that came before crypto is community.
Great. Sean.
Hi, thanks for coming. I'm Sean Kane, head of F-Success, which is the largest fintech innovation community in the world. In total, we have 3.5 million, 3.4 possibly. We grow by about 1,500 a day. Total community members. And we actually play on both sides. So on one side, on the startup side, we have the challengers, that are out there, like the Revoluts and those types of people who are either our clients, we help them grow, or we help them in the community to get things that they need to grow. On the other side, we're also the largest corporate innovation fintech platform in the world as well, and we work with many of the traditional banks as they struggle with the issues of, hey, what do I do in this new world? There's lots of things I don't recognize. What kind of clients do I serve, don't I serve? And then we help them answer the question of, how do I bring this innovation into my organization and then use it to grow and adapt to the new reality?
Okay. Now, and the judge of all that, I'm not sure if the right word, is the EIF, because you're funding funds that are investing in those innovation. And so what's your perspective on what's currently going on?
Maybe as a starting point, a few words on EIF for those who are not that familiar with us. So we are a European institution, and basically we are supporting innovation and job generation within EU and a number of associated countries, including Israel, through two types of interventions. One, which is guarantees. So we provide guarantees to mainly banks, traditional banks in this case, to allow them for providing additional loans to SMEs and companies. And the other activity in which I'm involved is what we call our equity investment. And here we are the largest LP in Europe, in the European actually VC ecosystem, investing on average 1.5 billion euro every year of new commitments. And we are exposed to fintech in two ways, through specialized funds and also through co-investments to some extent. There were a few names that were mentioned, like N26, where we are a co-investor, and we are also indirectly exposed to most of the well-known fintech companies through specialized funds, also generalist funds. And what we've seen and noticed for the last 4 or 5 years is that at that time there were no dedicated fintech funds. It was only about generalist ICT funds allocating some resources on a very selective way to fintech companies. Now we see more and more fintech specialized funds and also more and more crypto, blockchain investment teams. So this is a bit what we do, and we are exposed to all that kind of things, notably given the fact that the money that we invest is money that we are managing on behalf of certain entities like the European Investment Bank or the European Commission, where there is always a policy angle.
Excellent. So that's the ecosystem. The ecosystem has been changing due not only to business driver, but also to technology change. What's your perspective on the wave of the ICO and the seems disappearance of the ICO as alternative mechanism, crowdfunding-based mechanism, becoming security token mechanism? And is that the end of the VC and a move from VC to more crowdfunded type of funding driven by the new architecture? And what does that mean for your job?
I hope not, because this is my daily job. But I would say that so far we are bound a bit by some kind of statutes and investment guidelines, which lead us to investing only in funds, investing through equity and equity-like type of tools. So ICO tokens are a bit difficult, notably given the fact that security token in a way could qualify as equity tools, but most of the other kind of tokens not. So we have been working a lot with the market getting feedback. We organize some workshops internally with also some politicians to help them understanding and help us understanding what was happening. We are working on a kind of pilot project with the European Commission to invest into the blockchain ecosystem. Which form will it take? It's a bit uncertain now. Most probably it will be quite broad in purpose to allow us to test a bit this. But I would say that blockchain and more specifically ICOs, tokens, were a bit of a hype some 1 year ago, 9 months ago. It is true that we hear less and less about this and more about purely blockchain and AI, which are a bit the new paradigm.
Okay. Mihai, yeah, so you've had 1 feet in the traditional world, 1 feet in the startup innovation, chaotic universe. What's your perspective on what's changing from a banking perspective in this new world, the paper world, versus the Leumi world?
I think, sorry, Lou, you were trying to say something. Okay. So I think we can all talk about things that we already know about how technology is changing and how banking is changing and so and so. But I think what is more interesting, and I think it relates to your third question that you asked in the beginning, is that we see that companies are evolving and now talking about, we are talking a lot about that, but a lot of companies are already doing that, is about the customer obsession, thinking all the time about your customer and your customer needs and pain points. And if you'll move your strategy from P&L to customer only, I think that's a huge, it's a huge change in how companies think. And I think it's important because I think like a month ago or something like that, there was a CEO forum with like the largest CEOs in the world that talked about moving from shareholder model to stakeholder model. And you can be cynical about it and say, yeah, the Milton Friedman model is not dead and so on and so on. But I think it's a huge change because people now understand that if you want to be profitable in the long run and to be relevant, you only need to be focusing on your customer. A lot of people say that, and a lot of companies, they put it in their strategy, in their work plans, in their vision. But doing so, that's hard because, shareholders do not want to take a hit in their profit. But when you do that, then I think you're really successful. And I think that's the major change that I hope we are seeing, because in Pepper, for example, in our company, that's where we are, trying to do.
And while I applaud what Michal is doing, I sincerely do. I think the biggest change that's coming is at the end of the day, a bank, whether they're focused on the shareholders or even on their customers, are centralized. And ultimately, they're solving for themselves. That's what they do. And so I would ask, who is the customer? Which customer? What are the rules of how you're going to treat those customers? Who decides what those rules are? And those are very difficult questions to answer. And does it change? And who decides how does it change? And the great thing that decentralization brings us is it will tell us, it will be, not only will it focus on the customer, which is a great thing, but it will tell everybody what the rules are, and the rules can only change in line with the governance. So the customers actually get to decide how the rules change, not Michal or her boss or somebody else, and who knows at the end of the day what they're solving for. And that's the biggest difference that I think is coming.
If you are agnostic to change and you have a technology and the ability to change yourself within the changing, that's fine.
Well,
because
look,
the customer...
but you're saying that you're a benevolent king, and that's great. We all like a benevolent king. That's actually probably the best form of governance ever invented. But the problem is the king dies, and then the next king's not so benevolent. And then what we have is nothing very good. What's great about, Bitcoin, we all know what the rules are. for Bitcoin, and only the community can change the rules, and so we can all buy into everything. And then, by the way, if the community decides to go in a direction we don't like, we can take all of the code and we can fork it and go in a different direction, and all the work that the community put in, that I put in as a community member, doesn't get lost.
Right, but when you're
now
talking
you-
about, sorry, when you're talking about crypto, I think it's a larger discussion about, you know, money and what money is all about in society. It's not only banks, it's economics and how our future will look like, and what's money, okay?
Now I'm just talking about a governance system. So I'm talking about the same exact money that you're talking about, I'm just talking about the governance system and who gets to decide what the rules are.
The customer is the king.
So then you shouldn't have in a world in which it's decentralized, we don't need a company to decide, we just need a set of rules.
Yeah. So John and then Thomas, I had one question for you.
It's now the benevolent smart contract, right? I think that's the cool thing, playing on top of governance, and now it can be transparent. The benevolent smart contract can be transparent to everybody involved. I mean, we're definitely all heading that direction. I'm more excited about the user experiences, though. I think that's where a lot of the fun is going to happen, you know? Like, it was fun with the ICOs.
Yeah, go ahead.
Because it was like the wild, wild west, and the geeks figured out how to cut out, the venture capitalists, but I think those days are going to be pretty short now. But I'm looking forward to the user experiences. I use N26. I love it. So easy, right?
Ours is even better.
Are you available in Berlin?
Sorry?
Are you available in Berlin?
Oh, not yet.
Okay, you let us know.
Yeah. So, Thomas, you've had experience both of the banking world and the telecom world. How would you contrast, those two at BNP and at Orange in terms of distributed organization that enables and has open API or not to this outside bubbly fintech universe?
Well, first message, banks and telecom operators are playing the same strategy and the same banks. They're all facing two major disruptions. The first one is smartphone first strategy. Today, the smartphone is really becoming the first screen for all the connected people to have access to financial services. So we are all engaged in a mobile first strategy, right? Empowered with AI, with speech recognition, voice recognition systems, etc. That's the first big move. The second move is creation of an ecosystem of services. Today, what is winning the game is the capacity of a bank or a telecom operator to build from one or two first solution, like payment or international transfers, an ecosystem of services, even larger, including insurance, microcredit, micro savings, etc., etc. And to do so, you have to be very strong in customer experience and brand engagement.
And do you think it's key for you as Orange to control this ecosystem and own the governance and own the smart contract and have the ability to dynamically change them as you want or not?
Well, my perspective is that traditional banks are in difficulty in face of the new disruptors of the markets, be they telecom operators, fintechs, or GAFAs. Why? First, they are suffer from their legacy IT system and their old distribution network, which is physical, right? So they all engage in a transition from physical to physical plus more and more digital distribution networks. But it's taking time, it's taking money, and it's also a question of DNA.
Yeah.
They have to incorporate and hire people from outside to regenerate their own teams on that. Conversely, I see a very, very tremendous momentum around mobile telecom operators, fintechs, microcredit institutions, and GAFAs. These guys are about to become the winners of the market because they have at the same time the investment capability and the digital native DNA.
Great.
And based on very interesting cooperations, because among these 3 or 4 players, frontiers are blurred. You see telecom operators getting banking license, you see banks becoming MVNOs, etc., etc. So it's a very interesting play, win-win-one.
So Michael, and then we'll have one round of question on what has surprised you in the last 12 months. But Michael first.
No, just maybe a sentence on that. Yes, the traditional banks are changing dramatically and they face a lot of challenges, but on the other side, one shouldn't forget that the traditional bank has a lot of USPs for example, comes it to data protection, comes it to the data, comes it to the trust of the people, comes it to the ability to transfer risk. So to transfer money from A to B is a nice service, but in the end, someone has to take the risk if you want to have a financing, a capex investment, or whatever it is. So in the function to transform risk from one to another, the bank have a huge value proposition in that. But I'm with you, changing a legacy system is much more difficult than to build something on greenfield, because you wouldn't do all the mistakes from the past. But also on that, I would say that all the banks I see and I talk to, they know what to do, they know what the direction is, and I think it has also changed how we operate and cooperate with fintechs.
Great. So, one round, less than 1 minute each. What has surprised you in the last 12 months?
Absolutely. So we do an enormous amount of research about the issues that have come up here as we move from government to governance as the basis for money over time. It's going to take a while. But in the short term, the question is about users. And users consistently tell us that they do not like what they consider their legacy banks. We have an enormous amount of quantitative research that we use to help the challengers in this market, as well as to help the more established entities. And when we compare the challenger banks to the existing banks, the challenger banks that are good are consistently above a 9 NPS. The legacy
So what had surprised you is that people hate their banks. You should have called me.
Yeah, who knew?
Okay.
Yeah, who knew?
Next.
Okay, so I think that the most important thing that just happened in banking recently was that the PSD directive in European Union is effective from last Saturday, and it's like a huge milestone because it's the second place in the world when we have open banking after UK being operational. So it's like a huge thing because it allows decoupling the customer data from the institution that uses it, and this is like two very important things regarding this. One is that this huge breakthrough that will create a lot of new products, new value propositions just because of having an open banking, and is possible because of the regulator, not because of the bank. So it's the innovation that because banks wouldn't do this.
Great.
Never.
Okay.
So regulators are very important here.
Great. That is surprising. Mihai.
It's a tough question, I'm thinking. I think what surprised me is that we are always talking about how technology is changing rapidly and also in an exponential way. And it seems that, it's even faster than I ever thought. And how users are using that is also very fast. But because if I think going to the past, when we thought about building Pepper, we were looking at examples around the world. And that was like, 4 or 5 years ago? Those examples are not relevant anymore. Those banks are not relevant anymore. Those fintechs are not relevant anymore. And now there are these new fintechs and companies and banks that weren't there like
Great.
4 or 5 years ago.
Increasing
speed is amazing.
Okay, great. Excellent. Lou.
I would say the most surprising thing in crypto, we have been in dire need of a stable coin, which is essentially just a digital dollar, because you can't trade if you want Bitcoin or Ethereum and trade back and forth. You can't go back and forth to fiat very easily, so we need a digital dollar. And after a number of years, we finally got a solution, a company called Tether. And Tether became the digital dollar because for every dollar that they issued, there was a dollar in the bank. So everybody could take the Tether and get a dollar if they wanted. And so Tether blew up. It's now the most traded coin, except about 6 months ago it was revealed that Tether didn't actually have a dollar for a dollar. It only had 75 cents. And you know what happened to Tether? Nothing. Because at the end of the day, all money all digital dollar is faith. And the community had faith in Tether and that the next guy would take it for a dollar, and it's still trading at a dollar today.
Great, which begs a lot of questions we're not going to cover on what states are doing around cryptocurrency and how that might address that. Thomas, what has surprised you?
Three things. The first one is Well, blockchain.
Why?
I think blockchain has the capability really to create
You
new
have to
segments
pick
of the
one,
market.
not three, just
Okay,
one.
so blockchain is a good one.
Okay.
And then AI, speech recognition platforms, systems that are very powerful to engage better with the clients.
Okay, great.
PSD2 for sure is one thing, and if you allow me, just another one is the sensitivity of the
you have
clients,
one thing that
where
has
the
surprised
data
you.
are, and the fraud protection. That is a huge momentum these days, what we see, where people are getting more and more nervous of where are my data and I'm protected enough when it comes to fraud.
Excellent.
On my side, maybe I'm
David.
repeating a bit what I was saying earlier, but again, 1 year ago, everything was about crypto. Now everything is about AI. And blockchain remains. It was already here 1 year ago. It's still here. So I would say that a combination of AI and blockchain seems to be something
Great.
as a must
John?
now.
I'd say I'm really struck by how cautious the Europeans are to jump into crypto and more future-looking financial systems, because they're getting crushed by the U.S. and the
You mean
Asian
when
markets.
the French minister will say that under no circumstances will he enable Libra and Facebook to operate in France?
They won't.
No, that's what he said a few days ago.
Yeah, we'll see.
We'll
We'll
see.
see. That might be some shallow words. I don't know the guy, but
Okay.
that's the thing I'm big. There's a real opportunity, I think, for Europe to take a lead,
Great.
but I'm not seeing it. So that surprises me because it's right there for Europeans to jump into, and everybody is worried about Google, Facebook, Amazon. I can't name drop all the ones in Asia, but there's probably 10 times more companies in Asia racing out ahead in the financial markets.
Excellent. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for the panel. Bye.
Thank you so much, Mark. What about money, Mel? Does money make